Thanks
I don't
for
know if
that,
I can make
Tunnels.
that up. Can I make that up?
It's typical Moonkin magic out of
True.
him.
True.
Typical Moonkin magic out of him. But hey, let's see what these guys have to offer as Method NA and Ethical are ready to go as Atal'Dazar gets going.
And Bloodlust used right off the bat there by Method NA. Before the gate even comes down, they know they are going to want it again in exactly 10 minutes. So they are going into this first pull, having it pre-popped. Ethical doing the same pull here with the Bloodlust popped just a little bit later.
Yeah, did you see Chompy standing on top of that ledge there, where Method NA is actually just fighting the pack out in the middle of the open? Ethical is tanking the pack near that lip, so Chompy is still able to get a significant amount of way of the crane damage. Okay, so Yoda is actually off to the side, baiting those Juggernaut charges.
He's playing Beast Mastery Hunter. Ethical does not have a Hunter. Ethical playing that Rogue instead. That gets them access to a little bit more utility in various spots of the dungeon. But Yoda being that ranged player DPS, they get to put him on that snap spot there, which is pretty useful.
Hunters notoriously have a hard time of being able to get their pet off that spot if they don't pre-position it early. So Yoda does a really smart play of being able to get that pet pre-position. So Ethical and Method NA now electing to play Voidweaver Mouth here, using it as a kind of like a cooldown restoration mob, just waiting for their DKs to be able to get back up those superb offensive cooldowns, because after this, both teams are likely to play all of the Priestess of Lunza trash straight into the boss.
Yeah, Method and 8 downs. Void of your mouth there, maybe 20 seconds ahead of when Ethical's going to do it.
Method and 8 is also 12% of enemy forces count ahead. I don't necessarily believe that this makes a large difference in the scope of the dungeon, just because of the dungeon is going to be done in the same amount of pulls. I think by both of these teams, almost regardless of how much enemy forces count they have at this point. Would you agree?
Is that Teeming? Is that Teeming that's doing that?
That is Teeming.
Did they just have the... Yeah, so in Atal'Dazar, there's some randomness as to which mobs spawn on Teeming, and I think they just got more than...
No. It is set on the TR.
It's set on the TR? Okay.
Yeah. So on the tournament realm, it is set. On live, there is some randomness in regards to which mobs.
So they chose to pull more. They chose to pull a 34% pull instead of a 24% pull at the start, something like that?
Precisely.
That's wild. I didn't... What did they grab that Ethical didn't?
More Colossus. More Colossus?
Okay.
Colossos?
Colossi?
Yeah, Colossi. But something that was actually really nice between both Method NA and Ethical here is in that teaming environment, there is a Confessor in that pack that's in front of Priestess Alunza. So making sure that you CC it and kick it correctly is very important. You're going to want to CC the Healing Ward and then kick the Blonde Zombie's Mantle, utilizing something like Asphyxiate, maybe Intimidation Stun, and then utilizing a kick on the Mantle cast. Both teams very clean in that regard. And Priestess Alunza should be dropping for both sides here momentarily. Method NA still maintaining that 13% trash count lead. I can math. That 13% trash count lead. Again, I don't think it's going to result in one more trash pull between these two teams. I think it's going to ultimately be about the same.
All right, and we see Method NA getting ready for their next pull here. Lighty snaps a bunch of mobs up onto that ledge there. Yoda staying up here as well.
Okay, so Yoda dismisses pet. Entered camouflage. Okay, so he put a misdirection onto Lighty, jumps down, hits Razan. That snaps Lighty off of that spot straight in front of Razan with all of the trash that was sitting there. Ethical taking it a little bit, I don't want to say slower because they have the middle pack.
Different, yeah.
But it is different, yes. I think different is the correct word here.
Yeah, they're definitely hitting it differently as they are attacking these middle pack mobs in with the Sky Screamers and the swords. Middle pack, a lot of count, but they're not able to get this effective snap onto Razan as a trade-off, so we'll have to see which of these strategies ends up being faster.
Do you think that Ethical may get another pack and snap it into Razan, or do you think they're going to do Razan like what would be effectively cold, like without any trash on top of it?
Yeah, so they could still snap something else onto Razan.
Exactly.
We've seen many teams try different strategies at snapping on Razan, including most recently we saw Angry Toast snapping to Razan as the first pull of the dungeon.
Okay, so Skylark is grabbing something. Hold on, so Skylark
yeah.
is grabbing something. The rest of his team has dropped down. Arrow probably has that Tricks of the Trade on top of Skylark. Skylark pulls this pack. No, he's just going to do it himself. He says, hold my beer, jumps all the way down. Everything snaps right on top of him that he did in fact pull. And now, what is that, a triple bird with Razan here?
Yeah, that's the Teeming triple bird pull with the swords there. And just that. So a little bit smaller of a snap onto Razan, but they got all that extra count from the middle pack, so they are actually going to be exiting Razan with more count than Method NA does. But behind on time, as Method and A are already finished with Razan and are making their way to the rest of the dungeon here. The time to beat in time trial times was 11 minutes and 43 seconds. Method and A's first actual tournament match in Atal'Dazar up against Complexity Limit, they were able to make it in 12 minutes and 8 seconds, so they're still only about halfway through this dungeon. But we'll see if they're able to improve on either of those times, because so far this run has been looking very clean out of Method and A.
All right,
and
so
there's the middle pack
Yep.
as well. They're doing that massive snap as well.
With
that
triple
did
bird.
slightly different combination of enemies. This is even more enemies, I think, than Ethical did. I think this is going to get them pretty much to 100% trash. Maybe not all the way, but pretty close. I'm not sure if they need any more pulls after this.
Yeah. Method and A solidly in the lead now. That triple bird was probably the scariest part there, that feasting Sky Screamer. It does, in fact, have the fear kick, making sure that they got all the kicks there before the pack got obliterated by the double Death Knight. Razan will be going down shortly for Ethical, whereas Method and A sitting a nice solid, I don't know, 25% ahead?
Yeah, they've got 93% on the enemy forces meter here, so they may still need a tiny bit of trash. They're going to pull Urgroth, Breaker of Heroes now, and that'll leave them with just 2 awakened enemies to deal with on Yasma, so that shouldn't be too dangerous for them at all as they move Urgroth presumably over towards Volkal, which is the last boss they need to fight before they can get to Yasma.
Ooh, okay, so Choppy, pre-Life Cocoon Skylark. Skylark is doing that full snap by himself, gets it onto the pole, then Choppy needs to make sure that he pumps Skylark so he doesn't go down from the Toxic Sards. Arrow is wearing the Merecta's Fang trinket, huh?
Yeah,
What a world
that-
we live in. And if you guys
It
want
is
to
a
look
strength
at
trinket.
yes, so Merecta's Fang is a strength trinket. It does a significant amount of damage. If you guys would like to check out what the rest of the people in this run are running, you can go to mdi.gcd.tv, check their loadout, check their Azerite, corruption, all that jazz. Again, mdi.gcd.tv to look at that stuff. Huh.
It is a strength trinket, and we see basically only agility wearers use it, and sometimes Divine Field last weekend when he was tanking. But besides that, it's a strength trinket mostly used by agility wearers.
What a world we live in, honestly.
What a time to be alive.
Yeah. And Method and A has started on Volkal. Ethical slightly behind, still on this pack that's right down at the bottom of the stairs. This is a fairly dangerous pack to do with those invisible mobs, but Ethical makes very quick work of it. They are making their way towards Volkal as well.
They're at 100% on enemy forces, though, so they must have pulled something extra because they are still going to get some count from those awakened enemies.
They're not playing the
right?
awakened enemies with the last
Oh,
boss.
they're going to do the they're going to kite.
They're going to kite the mobs.
How sure are you that they're going to do that?
Well, they currently have 100% awakened forces count, so either there was a major blunder or they're going to kite the obelisks in. And that is my firm and final decision.
That's not a percent chance.
100% chance. I believe they're kiting
100% chance that they are kiting the last boss awakened enemies. All right, I hope that we get to see that. As Method and A have Volkal down to 60%.
Yeah. Ethical still chunking away at those totems, trying to take them a little bit more patiently. Whereas Method and A down to 50% on Volkal. I think Ethical is still a little bit behind, even though I think that we suspect that they're going to kite the obelisks at this point. And the reason is just because 70% on Volkal, while it will go quickly, is still it's still a pretty significant amount that you have to chunk through. I don't know, Drantis, do you feel like the difference in kiting the obelisk versus not is going to be 70% of Volkal's health?
I have yet to see how much time it's going to save them here. Again, there's only 3 obelisks as well. They've killed Void Reaver Malthier, Ethical has, so they're not saving as much time as the Mach was from Team Perplexed when they did it first in Freehold, with 4 of those awakened enemies being kited. So, yeah, I'm hesitant to say anything. I mean, they had a very fast time trial time as well. Ethical did. Let's see how it plays out for them. Method and A at 95%. I think they might need 1 Sky Screamer or something.
No.
Maybe they're fine.
So
they've got 2 awakened enemies with the last boss here.
On Teeming, Awaken gives 6 count per. So I believe that they're going to have enough here. Nagura and I made this major blunder yesterday, where there was a team at 93%, and I didn't think that was going to be enough either. It was in fact enough.
I see. So yeah, then Method and A getting ready for this last boss fight as Ethical finishes up Volkal. Ethical is going to be behind on pulling Yasma by about 45 seconds, but you may be right that they are kiting those awakened enemies, in which case they might be able to save some time over the course of that boss fight.
I don't think that they are going to... Okay, I unfortunately do not believe that they're going to save 45 seconds on the strategy, but it will open the door for other teams to be doing this strategy if Chompy shows how to do it successfully. I also heard that Team Inertia was kiting the obelisks, so I assume that more teams were kiting them. I did assume that. Maybe foolish of me to assume things.
Ooh, Lift goes down on the side of Method NA. They do have 2 battle reses available, but they need to make sure that they are able to keep this fight under control, because if those enemies start connecting with Yasma, the Soul Rend ones, then things go bad very quickly. Ethical pulling Yasma now, as it is at 70% for Method NA, and they are just about done with their Awakened challenge. Yeah, Chompy, Life Cocoons, building some threat,
Goodbye,
and uses
Chompy.
Transcendence to get out of the room.
All right, now you hope that the mobs don't snap.
Yep, you're really, really hoping to not discover any snap spots here.
Ooh, okay, so a Soul Rend mob actually spawns on Chompy. Chompy, good presence of mind, uses paralysis on that mob, still kiting those mobs away. Whereas on the side of Method NA, Yasma's down to 53%. They do have that 5-second disparity because of Lip's death. Whereas Ethical here, blasting the boss. Their Bloodlust came up, and they're sitting here. Oh man, this is going to be super close, actually.
Yeah, this is so close. Ethical has this, so they both have the same boss to deal with, but Ethical still has their Bloodlust for, actually I guess it's just run out there for them. So they are going to be in some difficulty. They'll have 5 seconds after this is over, though,
but they
try
lost
and kill the boss.
They lost the damage that JB is able to provide. So JB is able to do not an insignificant amount of damage to the boss. Since the Awakened mobs are now down, it is a fairly lax healing boss, so now is going to be the time in which you're not saving as much time. So it looks like Method NA is going to end up taking it.
Wow, what a blazing fast time, though, from both teams here. This is fantastic. Method NA are going to put up an 11-minute, 45-second Atal'Dazar. That is just 2 seconds slower than their time trial time. Meanwhile, Ethical here, it looks like, are going to beat their time trial team time, but it's not quite going to be enough to take down Method NA.
Even with not killing any of the Awakened mobs, it still was not fast enough to beat Method NA, as they've continued to show why Atal'Dazar is just one of their strongest dungeons, and they stomped that game, Zyro.
Yeah, that was just clinical. 2 seconds within their time trial time, and just, again, perfect execution. It seems like Method NA really has their synergy down to a T at this point, and they're in a situation where, you know, if nobody else can play the same way they're playing, they're just going to take this tournament down easily.
Yeah, and it really has been proving why they are the #1 seed, why they've been this powerhouse in the region for such a long time. And, you know, when it comes down to some of these dungeons like Atal'Dazar, they consistently, I feel like I even remember like last season Tettles, where they were one of the first teams to start posting some of the highest of Atal'Dazar times.
Exactly, and they did that 4-pack snap as well, like with Shakib running off to like a random side. Ethical, so we talked, Zyro just mentioned that Method NA was within 2 seconds of their time trial time. Ethical was within 1 second of their time trial time. Unfortunately, just a little bit slower. What a run by both teams there.
Yeah. But as you mentioned, it kind of opens the door for other teams, because we got a great shot there of how Chomp was just grabbing all of the mobs together and popping away the crane, getting a rogue to trick him, popping all of his defensive so he could really tank it, and then just getting out of there with a quick transcend and just going on his own little adventure, right? So I think in a lot of ways, Janice, we might look at how other teams can start mixing that in.
Yeah, it definitely looked like a good strategy. One of the problems I see with it is that it is less efficient, given that you have already done one Awakened enemy. If they could find a way to safely add the spider to that kite, you know, that could save them a lot of time over the course of the run, because, you know, they spent like a minute fighting that spider, and, you know, it was useful for cooldown recovery, but it was a minute fighting a mob that they could have maybe kited anyways. Now, of course, the spider, one of the trickiest enemies to have in that kite, because it is out there doing those casts, and it can be tricky to get threat on it and to move it, harder than all the other Awakened enemies to do that with. But that might be a way to turn this into a strategy that is actually faster than everything else that is available.
I think the strategy gets better if you drop the Rogue and you play Hunter. I'm pretty sure Rogue just sucks. like straight up, I'm pretty sure Rogue is just bad for this.
Okay, all right. Well, let's start going through some of those quick highlights, because this is a very short dungeon.
Well, it's interesting that you mentioned the rogue pick, because I think Hunter's one of the things that helped Method NA get this secure this advantage in the middle of the dungeon. I love this clip that we have from the observers showing what Yoda does when they do this snap pull down to Rezon. They get the snap on top of that ledge on their tank, and then the Hunter goes and pulls Rezon, which will snap the tank to Rezon. Rogue has a tougher time doing this because they're not a ranged class, whereas Yoda's able to just do both snaps within the space of about 10 seconds. So just tiny little efficiencies are what really lets Method NA take the lead there, and that's a perfect example of it right there.
Yeah, and you know, when it comes to these, one of the fastest dungeons we really have in the tournament, you know, at Atal'Dazar, even the slightest of mistakes can be massively impactful to it. And when it comes to dungeons where it's very easy to make mistakes, we got Shrine of the Storm coming up next, Radnos, and we've seen amazing performances by teams and also just catastrophic ones like we saw earlier today.
Yeah, we've seen a clean run from exactly Method NA, and even then it wasn't that clean. Yeah. It wasn't a perfect run, but we've seen a fairly clean run with no catastrophic wipes from Method NA. Every other Shrine I think we've seen so far has had at least one thing go horribly awry. So we'll have to see. Ethical has yet to play Shrine of the Storm in our tournament today and yesterday, so we'll get to see them for the first time in this dungeon, see if they have something equally innovative as that kite strategy cooked up for their Shrine of the Storm route. As they, of course, are down a game, they are going to need to win in both Shrine of the Storm and King's Rest in order to advance to the grand finals without needing to first go through that lower bracket.
I think that's gonna be quite a challenge to do as well, because we've already seen Method NA pull through like a very strong Shrine of the Storm, and the only ones who could really match up to them was Complexity Limit, because they were riding on the fact there, Zyro, that they'd be able to one-phase the boss. And if I remember correctly, Method NA wasn't close to it.
Well, Method NA had a really interesting happen where they only got the boss to like 91%, and then they ended up burning the boss down to single-digit percentages. So if they actually had a pretty good phase 1 burn and they got the boss down to like the normal mid-70s percentage that we see from most people, I think the one phase is definitely something that's in order for them, but they just have to actually go into the boss with that idea. It looks like they just weren't really thinking about it at that point.
We'll have to see. I mean, this is always just one of those opportunities for these teams to improve and show what they're really capable of, because, you know, this is much further down the line there, Tettles, but back of their head, they also got to be thinking about LAN. They got to think about squaring up against the European teams and see how they're doing, too.
Yeah, I mean, I guess there's some part of you that doesn't want to show, like, all of your cards too quickly, or show maybe what is the most innovative strategy, especially if you think that it could be groundbreaking. But I think ultimately, with how competitive the NA region is, at least Method NA gets a lot of practice with very tight performances like we just saw in that Atal'Dazar.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that, you know, we were talking about at the beginning of the week, is who is going to be that team in the region to really push Method NA and, you know, continue to grow, develop the meta and everything like that, because many cases Method NA cited their EU counterparts as the other team that was really pushing them to continue improving, right? And now we're seeing that the other teams in the top 4 are all capable of that, but they need to be, you know, fully consistent across the board there, Zyro.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that the thing that we need to keep mentioning here is how impressive Ethical is playing. They were only, like we mentioned, within 2 seconds of their time trial time on almost no sleep. So if they're able to play consistently again in this dungeon and bring this to a game 3 against Method NA, who has by far looked the best in the entire tournament, I mean, they're going to be major players moving forward.
I think
right, and
compared to how many, so we didn't have any OCE teams last time around.
Oh, yeah.
So the fact that we have both Honestly and Ethical showing pretty good performances is really promising.
We'll have to see what these guys got in store for us as Ethical. As you guys mentioned, has it all on the line right now as they're down 1 against Method NA in Shrine of the Storm.
Yeah, so something that I immediately noticed between Method NA and Ethical in the Shrine of the Storm is Ethical is running a Hunter, most likely for that misdirection ability, where Method NA has gone the second Death Knight. I think that there is merit to both, honestly, and if Lighty feels comfortable enough in his own ability to be able to just like personal snap all the mobs, then their strategy may be slightly better. I think it just kind of depends. Both tanks are in fact running that Dwarf Racial for the cleanse of Necrotic, though.
Yeah, we saw Complexity Limit play 5 Night Elves, but Method NA and Ethical are both on the let's just have a Dwarf tank, and, you know, they can't do a Shadow Meld skip, but they can clear all the Necrotic stacks, which we saw come back to bite Max, actually, at least once in their earlier match on this map.
I mean, not being able to clear necrotic stacks is... It's something... Okay, so I think the Night Elf strategy may be theoretically faster if you're able to not have to deal with just the necrotic being able to stack up, but unfortunately it's just not always consistent like that, and then sometimes, especially in a dungeon like Shrine of the Storm, there are just things that end up being incredibly challenging that you can't really account for. Ethical snaps Voidweaver Mouth there to that spot, so now they're able to just dump a lot of damage into it. Method and A also right there with them. Both teams are going to be downing Voidweaver Mouth there. There is a 1% enemy forces differential currently, though. I don't think that makes a difference, though.
Yes. Interesting. It may have been some droplets or something, or one extra spiritualist or something.
Initiate, maybe? I don't know. I don't think...
It could have been any number of enemies in the
Exactly.
starting part of the dungeon.
I don't
we
think
could name them all.
I guess you would hope that it doesn't make a difference. I don't believe it will.
Yeah, they definitely, you know, could very well be normal. Anyways, Aquasir. Looks like somehow Method and A already started the RP for Aquasir there as they come right out of the Awakened realm, and he's just there. They don't have to wait any amount of time for the RP. Meanwhile, Ethical waiting for that RP to go. So I wonder if Method and A were able to send forward. Yeah, if you look, J.Chi's Shadow Meld ability is on cooldown, and Lighty was at 27% health for much of that skip. So I believe that what happened is that while 4 of their members went to go and kill Voidweaver Malthier, J.B went to go and start that RP. And that has meant that they've gotten onto Aquasir maybe 15 seconds ahead of when Ethical did.
Yeah, definitely a big time save. Whenever you're battling against a team that is super close to you and the difference is seconds, something like that is fairly important in the grand scheme of things. Aquasir, it has phase for the side of Method NA. You do see the 3 Aqualings on their side. You do need to tank those Aqualings. You see Shakib Domi off to the side, J.Chi tanking one as well, and then Lighty tanking the one that the Observer's fixated on, with Windspeaker Heldus sitting right on top of that mob. Surging rushes come out. You're going to need to dodge out of the way of that, otherwise you're probably going to die.
They do manage to successfully dodge all of those charges. One of the Aqualings is down, so much of the danger goes away when that first Aqualing dies. Good job there of focusing damage. A little bit unfortunate that they couldn't get them all to stack up on their charge there. That's something that, when it does happen, can mean that this phase ends quite a bit quicker.
Undertow plus Enraging Gale Winds could also cause a player to die.
Yes, they do not have a Soothe, whereas Ethical does with access to that Hunter. So
Precisely.
As that Swiftness Ward is coming out from Windspeaker Heldus now, there's going to be a Raging Hasted Gale Winds that J.Chi is going to have to
Here's
try
a
and
blast.
heal up.
Oh no. All
oh
right.
no.
We're chilling.
They're all right. They're okay. Managed
So-
to get through that.
I think they're going to focus on Windspeaker Heldus and not get another Gale Winds, because one right here with the boss could cause a player to die. Ethical does have good RNG on their Aqualings, getting them to stack up, just kind of nuking them all down. Windspeaker Heldus dropping incredibly low as well. They're going to be phasing Aquasir about the same time as Method NA. Method NA is going to be dropping Aquasir here in a few seconds, though.
Yeah, to some extent it's RNG where the Aqualings go. On the other hand, they do charge at players.
It
so
is-
with good.
Yes.
You can bait them all to be in the same corner. It just, it's hard because they all start in different areas. So the amount of sacrifice you'd have to make to do that sometimes not worth it.
Yeah, so, I mean, ideally you could get 2 stacked up fairly easily. Getting that 3rd one stacked up as well is pure RNG, I feel like.
That is difficult to do. All right, Method and A getting ready for a gigantic pull here. Or they might be doing a skip.
No. Well, yesterday they pulled all of this stuff.
Yes, looks like they're just going to be pulling it all.
Okay,
That Ring of Peace
so
there.
This is an innovative strategy from a little bit different from what they did yesterday. So yesterday they pulled this a little bit slower. They didn't pull this pack that was outside. Instead, they sent Yodel later on in the pack to be able to go get this stuff. But instead, they're taking it a little bit quicker this time, not just awaiting the pack to get blown up. They're doing it all in one pull. Lighty is sitting really high on necrotic stacks. I believe that's a 60 stacks. He's still standing in that that minor reinforcing ward, which will help him get big DR. He does have his dwarf racial available. Really wants to hold on to that, though.
Yeah, who needs that? I'm just immune to healing. No big deal.
Easy game.
Easy. And they were able to get through that necrotic stack and a huge amount of count coming out from Method and A. Meanwhile, Ethical also doing a pretty big pull here. They do not have... Actually, I think this might be exact same size pull.
Oh, Tempest, please don't die. All right.
This is so rough, yeah. They're barely surviving that. Method and A gonna run through here. Because they're not playing 5 Night Elves, they do need to have just one player pull that big elemental back. So it's a little bit slower than doing a 5 Night Elf skip through there, but
Sure.
It did work out for them, and they are now going to be going into the boss fight here after snapping in and then snapping out a bunch of initiates.
So what Ethical
Huge.
did right there was really good, but unfortunately the mobs get spread because of the preparation that Method NA put into it with how they used the Ring of Peace, and that is why that pull went so much quicker for Method NA.
Yeah, they did a really, really good job of grouping everything up in that pull, and when everything's grouped up, it just more of it gets exposed to all the AoE at any given time.
Precisely. And
Ethical
that's,
here, doing the exact same skip with Eero taking the Guardian Elemental, and we'll be using Shadow Meld to drop combat with it in a few seconds here. They're going to try and probably do a pretty similarly sized pull here into... Maybe not. Maybe they're just going to fight some trash, actually. Yeah, it looks like they'll just be fighting 8 enemies for a little while.
So they're doing the dangerous part of the trash here first. This pack with all the attendants and the Ironhold Apprentices and whatnot is by far the most dangerous part, and the fact that they're able to do it all together is surprising in of itself. Skylark there, you see him kiting, using that Ring of Peace to get himself a Necrotic reset. He was sitting at 40 stacks. His Dwarf Racial is going to come up here in just a few moments. I think the major reason that they're doing it like this is because Lighty was able to maintain his Dwarf Racial through that humongous pull, where Skylark had to use his to be able to get a reset on the Necrotic stacks, so they're not feeling confident in being able to take all the initiates into the boss like Method NA did.
Yeah, there are those reinforcing wards on which you can drop those stacks, but the first one doesn't come out for a while in that boss fight, so they may have just not been confident. They're going to do a fairly big pull into this boss as well, though, Ethical, and you can see those Necrotics stacking up very quickly on Skylark. Forced to use the Dwarf Racial, and as soon as the Dwarf Racial gets popped on 0 stacks of Necrotic, out comes the Life Cocoon for maximum value. Method NA, though, have opened up a fairly sizable lead here in boss health. They do have a little bit less enemy forces count than Ethical does, as Ethical has cleared that 3-pack that Method NA has left untouched for now. They may be going to grab it in a bit. You can see Lighty kind of cheating towards that part of the room. Don't know if they're going to find a way to go and grab those 3 mobs down there. It looks like they're just not going to bother. They're going to be finishing this boss fight off without any extra trash in here.
So they did not get the cultists that separated from the tentacles yesterday. I'm trying to think. I don't know where they would have a mismatch in count. I think Ethical may just be further ahead in trash count, so they may have to just play less on the bridge, which is not exactly the most efficient thing, right?
Yeah, if you can survive those 10 enemies all at once on the bridge, it's just as fast as doing 8 of them there. So we'll have to see what ends up happening here, as Method NA is going to be going into this obelisk here. They are fighting Samrak, Beckoner of Chaos, of course, a very deadly awakened enemy on the last boss fight if he survives into that healer, stacking that Promises of Power. They're going to be killing that thing and then presumably doing some kind of Shadow Meld skip, because they are not trying to move Samrak all that far by itself. Maybe they're going to do it now that the little ads are dead too. Of course, Lighty does not have access to Shadow Meld himself, so if they tried to do a skip outside of the Awakened Realm, it would involve him dying and getting res. So it looks like they've decided that it will be less slow to just pull Samrak to where they want the portal, rather than doing a skip that way.
For the boys at home, you can in fact Dwarf Racial off Samrak, Beckoner of Chaos's Fear. I significantly doubt Lady would do that because we're in a necrotic setting. However, if you are playing Dwarf at home, you can dispel yourself with the Fear. So that is something that you can make use of if you feel so inclined.
Yep, that's a good strategy. Little snap coming out here from Lighty.
Snip, snap.
He is going to hold on to that that stone form ability so that he can save it for necrotic rather than using it against that Fear, as the Fear, kind of no big deal.
So not only do those
level.
walls snap, but those fire... I don't even know what they are. Those fire things on the side can also snap if you want to jump up on top of those as well. Useful whenever you're playing like that Void Weaver Malthier obelisk that's normally back there in the back. I don't think that these guys are going to be looking to do that, but it is something that is useful for other teams. Ethical has started Samrak, Beckoner of Chaos significantly behind where Method NA is. Method NA... So that's another innovation that they're doing today that they didn't do yesterday. They actually grabbed those 2 cultists with Ring of Peace to where that they spawn the tentacles, but the tentacles do not get in combat because of how the cultists were Ring of Peace away. That pack gets blown up instantly by the double DK. What the hell?
Yeah, that was really, really fast there from Method NA. They are now moving on to this cultist pull. Eating on in there is Lighty, casting some thunderclaps. J.Chi going ahead to start that RP on Lord Stormsong.
Ooh, Fell
There's the
Barrage,
Fell
Fell
Barrage
Barrage.
from Yoda, taking care of the rest of this pack of Abyss Dwellers. And they're
I think
going to
it's
go
kind
onto the
of
other side
wild
now.
that Ethical has not had a mistake yet they're so far behind, it seems like. They literally,
Yes.
both teams are doing very similar strategies, but Ethical somehow has gotten significantly behind in terms of time.
Just a gap has been opening up with Method NA having, 20 or 30 seconds faster strategies in a couple different spots so far this dungeon.
It's just the minor optimizations, like we were talking about at the very beginning. How we were saying JB starting the RP early, that opened up like a 15-second lead. In addition to that, there's just like stuff like how they were ring-a-piecing mobs in the doorway to be able to kite them around and keep them stacked for further prolonged periods of time. That opens up another 20 to 30-second lead. It's just minor optimizations between two incredibly competitive teams, it feels like.
Yeah, Ethical is getting into this, Lord Stormsong area in less than 12 minutes. That's not a slow time by any means to get here. Just Method NA have got this thing looking so clean. 0 deaths from either side. 0 deaths from Ethical in the whole series so far. And yet, they are losing. Remarkable.
But
Remarkable
they're
quality
consistent.
of play from both teams.
Yes. So even though they are behind, the fact that both of these teams are so incredibly consistent with very similar strategies is important, because it allows both teams to kind of build off one another and continue to grow, becoming better. Lip gets MC'd there. It looked like his APOC ended up getting killed off.
Yeah, that happens when you get mind controlled. Your pets become attackable as well, and
you saw Yoda not waiting to Fel Barrage, immediately Fel Barrage the APOC.
Yeah, I'm sure there's some friendly banter happening in their voice chat right now about that. And this match is still far from over, as of course that last boss fight is quite treacherous. And if Method NA were to wipe there, that would absolutely open up a window for Ethical to take advantage and seize a victory.
I mean, yesterday we saw Method NA not be able to one-phase Volzith.
Yeah, so even the one phase, if Ethical is able to pull that off, might be enough to close this gap here in terms of time. They're only 50% of Lord Stormsong's health separating them from Method NA.
Okay, so look at the difference in the trash count. Okay, does this trash count difference mean anything, or does it mean that Ethical is just overcount?
Do you think Ethical is just going to try and kite the awakened enemies?
I wasn't thinking that. I was thinking Ethical may not be playing the middle pack, but on further inspection, I don't think either team is going to be playing the middle pack. I think Ethical may just be a little bit overcount.
Yeah, I don't think this is a boss where it's reasonable to kite those awakened enemies at all.
That'd be really funny if they swam through the water with the mobs. I don't think that that's happening. That's not what I believe is currently about to occur.
Just keeping you on your toes. Method NA making their way now through the swimmy bit.
Does anybody get stunned here, Dretnus, do you think?
I think they might try and avoid those jellyfish. Looks like they've done a pretty good job of that so far. 88% on the enemy forces major, so I think they do need quite a bit of this room, but probably not all of it.
They still don't need the middle pack.
Certainly doesn't need all of it.
So we saw them yesterday skipping it. That's why I know that they don't need it, because we saw them yesterday skip it. That means that Ethical at 91% enemy forces count also does not need the middle pack. But 3% in this dungeon is a significant amount, because it was like a 700 count dungeon or something, like 650. So
Yoda drops an auto hammer there. Gonna quickly repair his gear. Good to have those on hand. A little bit unfortunate if they're needed, though.
Well, it's better than having your gear broken.
Better than having your gear broken, of course, yeah. And you can see Method NA getting ready to go into this boss fight. They are doing this exact same pull here that we've seen go wrong for Complexity Limit twice. Bunch of eels here, 18 eels, 2 awakened enemies, 1 Volzith the Whisperer. Out come the Death Knight bursts. There are those blood of the enemies. And they're doing a good job here so far of handling all the mechanics overlapping at once here. Anti-magic shell used on both Demon Hunters. Volzith now sub 90%, getting down to 81.
The percent you really want is like 75. If
81 is probably still doable.
81 may still be doable. If you have it at like 75 or below, that's almost like an insurance of a one phase, like almost 100% sure.
Good job there by Lighty of tanking Urgroth next to the Mindbender thing that the DPS players are hitting so that they can cleave somewhat efficiently. You can see Yoda darting over there to get an interrupt on the far Mindbender. As of course, Urgroth is visible and attackable in both realms now, so both the tanks and the DPS can attack him. He's being brought over to that other Mindbender now, as they've killed the first one.
He's going to be killed before the Mindbender, almost certainly. He should rather be killed before the Mindbender, just because he is the dangerous part of this pull. And as soon as he goes down, they can just continue to interrupt that Mindbender and not lose anything as long as they don't run out of breath. I have never
Yeah,
seen
you do run out of breath eventually down there. It has happened in some dungeon runs of mine, usually once people start dying down there.
Okay, I've never seen that, but it is something that could happen.
I don't believe that it will be something we'll be seeing in the MDI ever.
Would be really funny.
It would indeed. All right, they're building some resources now on Volzith as Lighty goes to pull the remaining eels that they need. And you're absolutely correct. This is all that they will need for enemy forces to be completed here.
Basically, between these two teams right here, it's about to be a battle of who's able to one-phase it. Ethical is at a very similar point. They're unfortunately like 20 to 30 seconds behind. They're basically hoping that Method NA has a mistake. Maybe JB or somebody, one of their melee ends up going down. They're not able to one-phase the boss. Ethical is right on their tails, but this is all eyes on Method NA. Volzith is dropping incredibly low. Those eels get blown up. His health keeps dropping. He's about to be sub 30%.
He's so dead. This is the most dead
seconds.
Volzith I've ever seen here. He's not even at 50% energy yet, and they have done way more than half of the damage they needed to do to get this thing dead before that phase. As long as Lighty can avoid dying, Stone Form gets used. He is out of ways to drop Necrotic, but he shouldn't have too many more Necrotic stacks being applied to him at this point. Volzith sub 10% here, and I believe that this is going to be Method NA earning their ticket into the Grand Finals later today.
And there it is, dude.
There it is. Method NA with an absolutely stellar run throughout Shrine of the Storm. And honestly, let's be fair, Ethical had a really good run coming in.